paralyzed baby girl was alone. What this German Shepherd puppy did was a miracle. The barking wasn't right. Mrs. Davison paused, head cocked, listening over the daytime chatter of her television. It was coming from apartment 3B next door, Sarah's place. It was Max, Sarah's young German Shepherd puppy, but the sound wasn't his usual playful yapping or the occasional frustrated whine when left alone for a moment. This was persistent, sharp, almost desperate. It echoed unnervingly in the carpeted hallway outside her door. Mrs. Davison frowned. Sarah was a single mom devoted to her baby girl Chloe, who had special needs. Couldn't use her legs. The poor dear Sarah wouldn't just let her puppy bark like this for no reason. It had been going on for several minutes now, maybe longer, growing in intensity. A knot of unease tightened in Mrs. Davison's stomach. Something felt distinctly wrong. The sound wasn't the usual playful yapping of a puppy. It was relentless, desperate. What could possibly be happening inside that apartment? The answer is both terrifying and heartwarming. Stay with us until the end to witness the incredible events that unfolded. And if you believe in the amazing bonds between pets and people, please show your support by hitting like, subscribing, and clicking the notification bell, setting down her knitting. Mrs. Davison walked to her door and opened it a crack. The barking was louder now, clearly coming from right outside Sarah's door, not inside. That was even stranger. She stepped into the hallway. Max, looking frantic, was running back and forth in the limited space between Sarah's door and the elevators, barking sharply, then whining, looking towards Mrs. Davison, then back at the closed apartment door. Why was he outside? And where was Sarah? Max? What is it, boy? Mrs. Davison called softly. Max stopped pacing and barked directly at her, a sound so urgent it sent a shiver down her spine. He ran to Sarah's door, scratched at it briefly, whined again, then ran back towards Mrs. Davison, barking insistently. He wasn't just making noise. He was clearly trying to communicate, trying to get her attention focused on the apartment. Mrs. Davison hurried to the door of 3B and knocked loudly. "Sarah, honey, are you all right?" Only silence answered from within, punctuated by Max's increasingly frantic barks from beside her in the hallway. She tried the handle, locked. Now genuinely alarmed, Mrs. Davison pressed her ear to the door. Faintly, almost lost beneath Max's barking, she thought she heard it. The weak, intermittent cry of a baby life for Sarah Thompson revolved around her daughter Chloe. At 8 months old, Chloe was a bright-eyed, curious baby with an infectious giggle, but she faced challenges most infants didn't. Born with spina bifida, a condition affecting her spinal cord development, Chloe had no feeling or movement in her legs. Sarah, a single mother navigating the complexities of healthcare therapy appointments and the sheer exhaustion of round-the-clock care, cherished her daughter fiercely, but often felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. Their small, sunny apartment filled with baby gear and adaptive equipment was their sanctuary, a world Sarah tried to make as bright and stimulating as possible for her little girl. 4 months ago, after much deliberation, Sarah had brought Max home. He was a bundle of clumsy paws, boundless energy, and sharp puppy teeth. A purebred German Shepherd from a reputable breeder, chosen not just for companionship, but with a quiet, long-term hope. Sarah envisioned Max growing alongside Chloe, becoming not just a pet, but a loyal friend, a steady presence, perhaps even a future helper, as Chloe navigated the world. From the start, Max seemed to understand the delicate nature of the tiny human in the house. He was rambunctious in his play with Sarah, but around Chloe's playpen or crib, he was surprisingly gentle. He'd nap nearby while Chloe slept occasionally, push a soft toy towards her through the bars, or offer a gentle lick to her outstretched hand, eliciting delighted squeals from the baby. He was smart, eager to please, and already deeply bonded to both Sarah and Chloe, his puppy exuberance tempered with an innate sensitivity that amazed Sarah daily. Their routine was demanding, but filled with love. Mornings were a whirlwind of feeding therapy exercises for Chloe playtime, and Sarah trying to squeeze in remote work during nap times. Max, learning the rhythms of the household, was mostly house-trained and quickly picking up basic commands like sit and stay, fueled by praise and tiny pieces of chicken. Sarah often felt stretched thin, juggling Chloe's needs, Max's puppy energy work deadlines, and her own well-being. She occasionally experienced dizzy spells, especially when stressed, or if she skipped a meal, something her doctor had advised her to monitor, suspecting reactive hypoglycemia. She tried to be careful, but sometimes, in the chaos of single parenthood with a special needs child, meals got delayed or forgotten. That Tuesday afternoon started like any other. The summer sun streamed through the apartment window, casting long shadows. Chloe was happily batting at the colorful mobile above her playpen in the living room. Cooing contentedly, Max was diligently working on a puppy-safe chew toy on the rug nearby, occasionally glancing towards Chloe. Sarah, having finally managed to get Chloe settled after a fussy period, realized she hadn't eaten since a hurried piece of toast that morning. Feeling a wave of fatigue wash over her, she headed to the kitchen to grab a quick sandwich. As she reached for the refrigerator door, a sudden, intense dizziness, unlike anything she'd felt before, engulfed her. The room tilted violently. Black spots danced in front of her eyes. Before she could even call out or steady herself, her knees buckled and she collapsed onto the cool kitchen linoleum unconsciousness, swallowing her whole in an instant. The apartment fell utterly silent, save for the soft cooing from the playpen and the rhythmic gnawing of a puppy on his toy. The silence didn't last long. Chloe, accustomed to the background sounds of her mother's movements and voice, sensed the abrupt stillness. Her cooing turned into a questioning whimper, then escalated into a full-blown cry of distress when Sarah didn't appear. In the living room, Max lifted his head, chew toy forgotten. He recognized Chloe's "something's wrong" cry. He trotted towards the kitchen, expecting to find Sarah comforting the baby. Instead, he found her lying unnervingly still on the floor. Puppy confusion warred with nascent instinct. Oh, he whined softly, nudging Sarah's arm with his wet nose. No response. He licked her face, a gesture that usually earned him a gentle push away or a soft word. Nothing. He could smell her familiar scent, but she was wrong. Still, Chloe's cries grew louder, more insistent, now echoing from the living room. Fear and perhaps hunger mingling in the sound. Max felt a surge of anxiety, torn between the unmoving figure on the floor and the escalating distress of his smallest, most vulnerable pack member. He ran back to the living room, circling Chloe's playpen, whining. He tried jumping up, resting his front paws on the mesh sides, desperate to offer comfort, but he couldn't reach her. Her cries seemed to fuel his own growing panic. He ran back to Sarah, nudging her more insistently, then back to Chloe, his puppy brain struggling to comprehend the situation. Why wasn't Sarah fixing this? Why wasn't she calming the baby? He let out a series of short, sharp barks, trying to rouse Sarah, trying to communicate his distress. Still, nothing. Time stretched on Chloe's cries, eventually began to weaken, tapering off into exhausted, hiccuping sobs as fatigue overtook her fear. The apartment grew quiet again, but this silence felt heavy wrong. Sarah hadn't moved. Max sat panting near her head, his ears flat, sensing the deep abnormality of the situation. An instinct, primal and urgent, began to surface through his puppy confusion. Help was needed. Help wasn't here. Help was outside. But how to get outside? He ran to the apartment's main door, sniffing and pawing at the base, whining in frustration. It was solid, immovable, offering no escape. He raced through the small apartment, his claws clicking on the laminate flooring, searching for another way. He pawed at the sliding glass door leading to the small balcony, but it was securely latched, then driven perhaps by a stray scent on the breeze or sheer chance. He investigated the low window in the living room that Sarah sometimes cracked open a few inches for ventilation. He sniffed intently at the opening. Could he fit? He pushed his nose against the screen, whining, finding a small tear near the bottom, perhaps one he'd made himself in previous explorations. He began scratching and worrying at it with his teeth and paws. Driven by adrenaline and desperation, he managed to enlarge the hole enough to push the flimsy screen outward. He then wriggled his surprisingly flexible puppy body through the narrow gap between the window and the frame, tumbling onto the concrete walkway of the third-floor open-air hallway. Freedom! But he didn't bound off exploring as a typical puppy might. His anxiety was still high, his focus tethered to the silent apartment. He ran immediately to apartment 3B's door, sniffing intently at the threshold, whining. He knew this was home. This was where Sarah and Chloe were. He looked up and down the empty corridor. No one. How could he get help? The only tool he possessed was his voice. He lifted his head and began to bark. Not the uncertain yips of playtime, but loud, clear, insistent barks directed out into the hallway, aimed at the other closed doors, aimed at anyone who might hear. He paused, occasionally listening, then resumed pacing back and forth in front of door 3B, letting out sharp, demanding barks interspersed with anxious whines. Down the hall, Mr. Henderson in 3D turned up his TV volume, slightly muttering about that yappy shepherd pup. A few doors down, a teenager briefly opened her door, glanced out, irritably, saw nothing immediately amiss, and closed it again. Max's initial efforts were being dismissed as typical puppy noise, but he didn't stop. His barks became more rhythmic, more urgent, fueled by the lingering image of Sarah's stillness and Chloe's cries. It was this sheer, unwavering persistence, the unusual nature of the continuous, desperate barking from outside the apartment that finally snagged Mrs. Davison's attention next door and prompted her to investigate further, overcoming the initial dismissal shared by other neighbors. When she arrived at the door, Max immediately focused his efforts on her running between the door and her barking directly at her, leaving no doubt in her mind that he was deliberately sounding an alarm. Mrs. Davison's initial concern solidified into genuine alarm. The locked door, the silence from Sarah, the faint cries of the baby from within, and Max's frantic, intelligent signaling from the hallway. It all painted a terrifying picture. "Okay, Max. Okay, boy. I understand." She murmured, her own heart starting to pound. She banged on the door again, harder this time. "Sarah, can you hear me, Sarah?" Nothing. Max whined and scratched at the door again, looking imploringly at Mrs. Davison. Wasting no more time, Mrs. Davison fumbled for her cell phone. her fingers trembling slightly as she dialed 911. "Yes, emergency," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "My neighbor, apartment 3B, Sarah Thompson. I think something's wrong. She's not answering her door. Her puppy is outside acting frantic, and I can hear her baby crying inside. She lives alone, and the baby has medical problems. Please send someone quickly." She then immediately called the building superintendent, Ben Carter, whose number was posted in the lobby, repeating the urgent message minutes later, which felt like an eternity to Mrs. Davison as she tried futilely to soothe Max in the hallway. Ben Carter arrived, breathless, carrying a master key and a pry bar. Several other curious neighbors peeked out their doors, drawn by the commotion. Ben tried the master key. It turned, but an internal deadbolt or chain was engaged. "Okay, stand back," he instructed, wedging the pry bar into the doorframe. With a sickening crack of splintering wood, the door burst inward. The scene that greeted them stopped everyone in their tracks. Just inside, Max immediately darted past their legs, torn between rushing towards the kitchen and the living room. In the kitchen, Sarah lay exactly where she had fallen, pale and frighteningly still. In the living room, Chloe was awake again, her face tear-streaked, letting out weak, exhausted whimpers from her playpen. The apartment felt unnaturally quiet now, the silence amplifying the sense of crisis. Ben Carter rushed to Sarah's side, checking for breath. "She's breathing," he announced, relief flooding his voice. "Looks like she fainted." Mrs. Davison hurried to Chloe, murmuring soothing words. Max, meanwhile, ran to Sarah, licked her hand anxiously, then ran to the playpen, whining softly at Chloe before returning to Sarah's side, as if standing guard. Just then, the wail of sirens grew louder, and two paramedics hustled down the hallway with their gear. They took over immediately, their professional calm cutting through the neighbors' anxious chatter. They assessed Sarah quickly, checked her pulse and blood sugar. "Blood sugar is dangerously low," one paramedic announced, already preparing an IV, classic hypoglycemic event. "Good thing someone called when they did." As they worked on stabilizing Sarah, the other paramedic checked on Chloe, confirming she was unharmed, just dehydrated and frightened. Amidst the controlled chaos of the rescue, the neighbors and Ben Carter pieced together what had happened, looking from the now conscious but groggy Sarah being prepared for transport to the whimpering baby, and finally to the small German Shepherd puppy, sitting faithfully beside the stretcher. "It was the puppy," Mrs. Davison explained, stroking Max's head. "He got out somehow and barked in the hall until I came. He wouldn't stop. He knew." The lead paramedic looked down at Max. "Heard him barking all the way down the hall when we arrived. Smart dog." "You're lucky he was here, ma'am," he said to Sarah as they lifted the stretcher. Sarah, her voice weak, managed a tearful smile towards her puppy. "My Max," she whispered. In that moment, Max's status shifted irrevocably. He wasn't just the cute puppy, the potential companion. He was the hero who had understood danger, overcome obstacles, and persistently summoned help, saving his human's life. The bond within their small family, already strong, was now forged in the crucible of crisis, and the neighbors who witnessed it would never look at the clumsy shepherd pup the same way again. Max's actions had set in motion a chain of events that ensured his family's survival, marking a definitive turning point in their lives together. Sarah spent less than a day in the hospital. Stabilized with glucose and fluids, she underwent tests that confirmed reactive hypoglycemia, likely exacerbated by stress and inconsistent eating habits, common among caregivers, especially single parents. The doctor provided strict dietary guidelines and stressed the importance of regular meals and monitoring her blood sugar levels. Lying in the sterile quiet of the hospital room, Sarah replayed the terrifying moments of collapsing the gap in time and the overwhelming relief of waking up surrounded by paramedics. But overriding everything was a profound sense of gratitude and awe directed at her 4-month-old puppy Max. Her playful, clumsy Max had saved her. He had understood the gravity of the situation and acted with intelligence and persistence far beyond his age. The realization brought tears to her eyes, tears of relief, love, and a fierce determination to be stronger. For both Chloe and their furry hero returning home felt like crossing a threshold into a new reality. The apartment was the same, yet different. Mrs. Davison had kindly stayed with Chloe until Sarah's sister could arrive, and the neighbors had helped Ben Carter temporarily fix the damaged door frame. Max greeted Sarah with ecstatic whines and full-body wags, showering her with puppy kisses, seemingly unaware of the magnitude of his actions, but clearly overjoyed to have her back. The bond between them felt electric. Charged with the unspoken understanding of what had transpired, Sarah found herself constantly watching Max, marveling at him. She hugged him tighter, spoke to him more, included him even more consciously in their daily routines. Life settled back into a rhythm, but with significant adjustments, Sarah became meticulous about her meals and snacks, setting alarms on her phone as reminders. She educated herself further on managing her condition. She also found herself observing Max with a new perspective. His attentiveness, his quick learning, his obvious devotion, were these just typical GSD traits, or was there something more? Could his sensitivity extend to recognizing subtle changes in her? Inspired by his life-saving alert, Sarah began idly researching German Shepherds and their capabilities, stumbling upon articles about medical alert dogs, including those trained to detect changes in blood sugar levels. A seed of an idea was planted. Could Max someday be trained to help her in a more formal way? The immediate reality, however, was that Max was still very much a puppy. He needed consistent training, socialization, and outlets for his boundless energy. While his heroic act was undeniable, he was also prone to chewing shoes, having accidents during house training, and barking excitedly at squirrels outside the window. Sarah enrolled him in a local puppy obedience class focusing on positive reinforcement methods. She practiced basic commands like sit, stay, come, and down daily, rewarding him with praise and tiny treats. Max, intelligent and eager to please, thrived on the attention and structure. Sarah noticed he seemed particularly attuned to her moods. If she seemed stressed or tired, he would often stay closer, resting his head on her knee or bringing her a toy. Amidst the demands of Chloe's care, her own health management work, and puppy training, Sarah felt the familiar weight of overwhelm at times. Financial constraints were a constant worry. Formal assistance dog training, she discovered, was incredibly expensive and rigorous, requiring years of dedicated work and professional guidance. Was it fair to put that expectation on Max? Was it even feasible for her? Some evenings, exhausted after a long day watching Max wrestle energetically with a squeaky toy, she'd feel a pang of doubt. This was just a puppy. A wonderful, heroic puppy, but still a puppy. Maybe she was projecting too much hope onto him. Maybe just loving him and giving him a good life was enough. But then she would see Chloe propped up with her support pillows, giggling as Max gently licked her fingers, his tail wagging softly. She would remember the feeling of waking up on the cold kitchen floor knowing Max had brought help. Her resolve would harden. She didn't need Max to be a perfectly trained service dog tomorrow, but she could lay the foundation. She could nurture his intelligence, strengthen their bond, and provide him with consistent positive training. She started researching local German Shepherd breed clubs looking for resources and experienced trainers she might consult when Max was older and more mature. She focused on celebrating the small victories, a perfect stay, a quick response to come, a calm greeting at the door. Each success was a step not necessarily towards a formal service dog certification, but towards building the best possible partnership with the remarkable dog who had already proven himself a hero. Their future path wasn't entirely clear, but it was one they would navigate together, step by patient step. The true climax of this chapter in their lives wasn't a single dramatic event, but rather a quiet realization solidified several months after Sarah's collapse. It was a typical Saturday morning. Sarah, now diligent about her health, felt well rested. Chloe, nearing her first birthday, was sitting securely in her supportive high chair, happily gumming a teething biscuit. Max, now a lankier, more coordinated 7-month-old, lay on his mat nearby, having just finished a short positive training session with Sarah, where he'd successfully mastered holding a down stay. For a full minute, Sarah was cleaning up Chloe's breakfast remnants when she felt that familiar, albeit much milder now, wave of lightheadedness. She hadn't forgotten her mid-morning snack. Perhaps it was just fatigue. She paused, leaning against the counter, taking slow breaths. Before she could even fully process the feeling, Max, who had been dozing, lightly lifted his head. Instantly, his ears perked. He stood up, walked directly over to Sarah, and sat purposefully at her feet, looking up at her intently. He then nudged her hand firmly with his nose once, twice. It wasn't an aggressive nudge, nor a playful one. It felt deliberate, focused, questioning. Sarah stared down at him, astonished. He had never done that specific sequence of actions before. Was it possible? Could he already be sensing the subtle physiological changes associated with her blood sugar dipping even slightly? Recalling her doctor's advice and Max's previous alert. Sarah didn't wait to find out. She immediately went to the cupboard, grabbed a juice box she kept handy, and sat down, sipping it slowly. As she drank, Max remained sitting close, watching her face. After a few minutes, as the lightheadedness subsided completely, he seemed to relax, visibly, nudging her hand gently one more time before returning to his mat with a soft sigh. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. It wasn't a fluke. While not formal trained alerting, it was undeniable attentiveness, a connection so profound he reacted to a change in her before she had fully registered it herself. This quiet moment, this simple interaction, was the culmination of everything they had been through. It cemented Max's place not just as a hero or a pet, but as an intuitive, deeply bonded partner in her life and Chloe's care. The central question, could they function and thrive as a unit with Max playing a meaningful role beyond just companionship, was answered with a resounding, tearful yes. He was more than she ever hoped for life for Sarah Chloe, and Max settled into a new, more secure normal. Sarah continued to manage her health proactively, but Max's attentiveness provided an extra layer of reassurance, a silent guardian, watching over her. While she still planned to consult with professional trainers about potentially honing his nascent alerting skills when he was fully mature, she felt less pressure. Max's primary role was clear. He was family, a source of joy, companionship, and unwavering loyalty. Max, transitioning through adolescence, continued his obedience training, growing into a handsome, well-mannered young dog. His puppy energy was channeled into long walks, with Chloe often accompanying them in her adaptive stroller, play sessions, and learning new commands. His bond with Chloe deepened daily. He seemed to instinctively understand her limitations, gentle in his interactions, often lying patiently beside her during floor time or bringing toys directly to her hands. He was her furry shadow, her devoted friend. The story of Max's heroic actions became a favorite anecdote among neighbors and friends. Mrs. Davison never tired of recounting how the persistent puppy saved the day, often bringing Max special dog treats. He was a minor celebrity in the apartment complex, greeted with affectionate pats and admiration. Sarah used the story sometimes when connecting with other parents of children with special needs or individuals managing chronic health conditions, sharing it as a testament to hope, resilience, and the incredible, often underestimated capacity of animals to connect with and care for their humans. Their apartment, once sometimes filled with Sarah's anxieties, now radiated a stronger sense of completeness and security. It wasn't always easy. There were still challenges related to Chloe's care, Sarah's health, and the demands of raising a large breed dog. But they faced them together, a unique family unit forged by crisis and cemented by love and the unwavering loyalty of a German Shepherd puppy whose actions truly felt like a miracle. The future held possibilities, maybe even formal assistance work for Max. But for now, they cherished the present, grateful for each other and the extraordinary dog who had not only saved a life, but had also become the heart of their home.